You know why we are here this late. We are continuing to follow the breaking news. Former President Donald J. Trump indicted by a Washington grand jury on 4 charges. I want to break down the political impact with my colleague John Allen, senior national politics reporter for NBC News, and former Republican Congressman David Jolly of Florida. David, what's your reaction?
Look, it's certainly a grave moment, I think, as everyone knows. I'm more captivated, though, a little bit, Steph, by this political question, because despite all the lawyering that went into this indictment, I'm not sure that the Jack Smith indictment and ultimate trial is going to bring the final closure to this. I think it is going to be a political question in the November 2024 election. And what I mean by that is the gravity is around Donald Trump being charged as a former president. The complexity to this, though, for the country is Donald Trump, the credible candidate for the White House, who intends to run on a campaign of absolution and retribution, seeking to use the most basic democratic process of all, ironically, a free and fair election, to be absolved of his most undemocratic behavior. And that is a tough moment for the nation to reconcile between our fragility and our resilience. The notion that a major party candidate, a credible candidate electorally still in this country, will be asking for political absolution of the alleged crimes in the Jack Smith indictment, that's a tough moment for the country. And I think we may not be fully prepared for what that will put us through within our body politic over the next 18 months.
John, what do you think about that? Right? Donald Trump is currently the clear frontrunner. His best defense in these 3 separate indictments that he is facing is to delay as long as possible, win the election, wipe all of this out, and spend the next 4 years seeking revenge.
I mean, this is an amazing case, first of all, Stephanie, because the facts are not really going to be in dispute. The question is whether the president was allowed to do what he did. Mike Pence, the former vice president of the United States, not Joe Biden, not Democrats in Congress. Former Vice President Mike Pence said today, our country is more important than one man. And I think this trial is going to be a test of that. And more than that, the election itself is going to be a test of that. Does this country, do the voters of this country look at Donald Trump and say he is more important than the peaceful transfer of power, than fair elections, or in fact is the country and accountability and the democratic system that we've lived under more important?
But, David, this man is not running unopposed. There are a host of other Republicans vying for the Republican nomination. And I want to share what our mutual friend Michael Steele tweeted just a few moments ago, where he writes, not one of the GOP presidential candidates can figure out how to run against a guy who is on trial for a rape charge, paying a porn star hush money, violating the Espionage Act, and conspiracy to overturn the results of an election. He's got a point. None of these people can break through against a guy with this kind of baggage. Why?
Well, part of it is their fecklessness and incompetence as candidates. But the second part is a reflection of where today's Republican Party is. And that has to be studied almost through a cultural and sociological lens, this metamorphosis of the Republican Party in the last decade. But Steele is right, you are as well, to focus in on Republicans, because the first test for our body politic is whether or not the Republican Party, out of partisan allegiance, ignores their kind of national stewardship obligation and goes ahead and nominates Donald Trump. And then it does become a general election question then. I think it's fascinating that Donald Trump likely will not be in jail. He will be a free man when he stands for election, either because he's been able to delay the trial or because perhaps he has been acquitted of the crimes, or if he's been convicted because he's awaiting sentencing where it's on appeal. So Donald Trump will have all of these legal wranglings as a question before voters next November if Republicans don't choose or find themselves incapable of stopping him.
What do you think, John?
I think there was a little bit of a display of Republicans today, the ones we expected coming out and hitting Donald Trump. They tend to be the ones that aren't doing very well. The ones who are doing a little bit better and also not very well have decided not to distinguish themselves. You saw Ron DeSantis today basically, follow the line of Donald Trump that the government's being weaponized. And his big suggestion was that the trial should be removed from Washington, D.C., where the alleged criminal conspiracy happened, because he thinks Donald Trump can't get a fair trial in Washington, D.C., where, again, Donald Trump is accused of having committed these crimes. None of the Republicans who are serious contenders have been able to or willing to come out against Trump, and that's because the voters in the Republican Party will not allow them to do that.
David, what is your Republican crew, right? Like your posse, the kind of people who subscribe to the Republican ideals that you once did when you sat in office. What do they think of all this? Because you just said a moment ago, if any of these other candidates can take on Trump, the majority of them aren't trying.
That's right. And I don't know that I have a Republican crew anymore, because not only has there been the ideological shift away from conservatism to kind of angry populism, but there also has been this acceptance of very anti-democratic themes and reasons for outsiders to question the patriotism in this moment of those who continue to back Donald Trump. So I don't know that there are people that are hanging on to the Republican Party other than those who truly believe it will come back, but it won't. It's over. It's done. Ron DeSantis's lack of willingness as a major party candidate today is a reflection of where the party is. Donald Trump will likely be convicted through one or more of these cases, but still be the Republican nominee and possibly supported for the White House nationally, largely by Republicans.
Ron DeSantis wants to be president of the United States, wants donors to give millions and millions of dollars so he can run. Yet on the day that his #1 rival is indicted, he didn't have time to read his 45-page indictment. Think about that, donors. John Allen, David Jolly, thank you both for being here.